Welcome to History Distilled. Today we're going to look at the Skirmish of Gloucester and the rise of Lafayette. Time is short, let's jump into it. As November 1777 drew to a close, the cold landscape of southern New Jersey heard the sound of an army on the move. Along its muddy roads marched Lieutenant General Charles Cornwallis, an aristocratic and battle-hardened British commander at the head of a column of 4,500 redcoats and German auxiliaries. He was a man of immense experience, a veteran of European warfare, now executing a critical mission for the crown. His objective was straightforward: secure the Delaware River, forage for supplies, and return to winter quarters in the captured American capital of Philadelphia. Shadowing him, unseen in the woods and hamlets, was an ambitious but inexperienced young general, one who was still recovering from a musket ball to the leg, a wound he received at the Battle of Brandywine just 2 months earlier. The 20-year-old was the Marquis de Lafayette. Lafayette came from a wealthy, land-owning family in Chavagnac, France. He followed the family's military tradition, becoming an officer at just 13. In his late teens, the Enlightenment ideals of freedom, self-governance inspired him. He saw America's fight as a noble stand against tyranny. But the fight against Britain wasn't just ideological. It was personal. You see, a British cannonball killed his father in the 7 Years' War, so the chance to strike back at Great Britain was very appealing to him. However, his ambition faced a significant obstacle: King Louis XVI. The king feared war with Britain, so he forbade his officers from joining the American conflict. But Lafayette, wealthy and well-connected, wouldn't be deterred. He secretly bought a ship and aptly named it La Victoire, meaning the victory. To avoid suspicion, Lafayette and his fellow French officers first went to Bordeaux. From there, La Victoire then sailed to Los Pasajes, a Spanish port, to prepare in secret. Despite his efforts at secrecy, word reached the French court, and an arrest warrant was issued. Lafayette returned to Bordeaux, appealed to his family and the court, but they refused him. With no other option, he disguised himself as a courier, raced back to Spain, rejoining his ship. Finally, on April 20th, 1777, the Marquis de Lafayette and his companions set sail for America. The Atlantic crossing was a grueling 54-day ordeal. He used those long weeks at sea productively, dedicating himself to learning English, a skill that would prove invaluable in the months to come. And on June 13th, La Victoire made landfall near Georgetown, South Carolina. The young Marquis had arrived, not as an official representative of the French government, but as a passionate volunteer. He was ready to offer his sword and his fortune to the cause of American independence. The Continental Congress had given him the title of Major General, but it was a title without an army to lead. He was a political symbol attached to American forces, but he burned with an impatient ambition to prove his worth on the battlefield. The morning of November 25th was going to be his moment to shine. But before we continue, I would ask that if you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing so you can enjoy future episodes. Now, the stage for this small drama was set by the grand strategy of British General Sir William Howe. In the summer of 1777, Howe launched his Philadelphia campaign, a massive operation designed to capture the American capital, which was the seat of the Continental Congress. He believed its fall would shatter patriot morale and lure General Washington's Continental Army into a decisive, war-ending battle. But instead of marching overland from New York, Howe chose a longer sea route. He transported nearly 18,000 men down the coastline and up the Chesapeake Bay, landing them in Head of Elk, Maryland, in late August. Washington moved to block the British, but the Americans were outmaneuvered and defeated at the Battle of Brandywine on September 11th. It was here that Lafayette was wounded while rallying retreating troops. With American forces reeling, Lord Cornwallis led the British vanguard into Philadelphia on September 26th. A procession met with the cheers from the city's loyalists. Howe had his prize, but his army was at the end of a long, vulnerable supply line. To sustain his forces through the winter, he desperately needed to open the Delaware River to the Royal Navy's fleet. The Americans, however, had turned the river into a formidable defensive barrier. South of the city, they constructed two forts: Fort Mifflin on Mud Island in Pennsylvania and Fort Mercer on Red Bank, New Jersey. Between them, hidden just below the water's surface, they had sunk a rows of massive iron-tip chevaux de frise designed to tear open the hulls of any ship that tried to pass. What followed was a brutal 6-week campaign to clear this choke point. On October 22nd, the British sent a force of 2,500 Hessians to storm Fort Mercer. The attack was a bloody catastrophe. The 400 American defenders repulsed the assault, inflicting staggering casualties on the Hessians in one of the worst defeats of the war. Thwarted on land, Howe turned the full might of the Royal Navy on Fort Mifflin. For 5 relentless days from November 10th to the 15th, British warships and shore batteries pounded the small island fort into rubble. The American garrison held out under apocalyptic bombardment until the fort was utterly destroyed, finally evacuating the ruins on the night of November 15th. The fall of Fort Mifflin sealed Fort Mercer's fate. The New Jersey fort was now isolated and indefensible. Washington had dispatched a force under Major General Nathaniel Greene to support the garrison, but it was too little too late. On November 16th, Cornwallis crossed with a large British force into New Jersey to take the fort from the rear. Outnumbered, outgunned, the Americans abandoned Fort Mercer without a fight, Cornwallis gaining occupancy on November 20th. The final act of the river campaign came the next day. The small American naval flotilla, now trapped between the British fleet and the captured forts, was cornered off Gloucester Point. Rather than let the ships be captured, the crews abandoned and burned them, a fire that lit up the November sky. The British had finally won control of the Delaware, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. The 2-month delay in securing the river had been costly in both men and material. It had consumed the remainder of the campaign season, preventing Howe from launching any further operations to destroy Washington's army before it settled its winter encampment at Valley Forge. With the river secured, Cornwallis's immediate mission shifted. His army of roughly 4,500 British and Hessian troops were tasked with foraging extensively through the rich farmland of southern New Jersey. They were to gather livestock, grain, and any other provisions they could find to supply the main army for the winter in Philadelphia. From their base at the newly captured Fort Mercer, they began a slow, methodical march north, arriving and making camp in Gloucester town on November 25th. Watching Cornwallis's every move was a Continental force commanded by Major General Nathaniel Greene. Greene's army consisted of several Continental brigades and local militia. Washington had sent to New Jersey to support Fort Mercer. However, the force wasn't strong enough to risk a full-scale battle with Cornwallis's superior numbers. Thus, Greene's mission changed to shadow the British, harass their movements, and prevent them from pushing deeper into New Jersey. And it was the young Marquis de Lafayette who accompanied Greene on this mission. Seizing the opportunity, Lafayette received permission from Greene to conduct a reconnaissance mission. He assembled a small, mobile force of about 350 men for the task. This was not a formal command, but a hand-picked ad hoc unit perfectly suited for a quick strike. The core of his force was a detachment of Pennsylvania riflemen, along with a company of New Jersey militia. Lafayette began his mission not with an attack, but with a daring personal reconnaissance. He spent most of the day on horseback, carefully scouting the terrain and enemies' positions around Gloucester town. Driven by a thirst for first-hand intelligence, he pushed forward, at times coming so close to the British lines that he was within easy firing range of their sentries. But from his vantage point, he could see the British Army's baggage and supplies being ferried across the Delaware River back to Philadelphia, confirming that Cornwallis was indeed preparing to withdraw. He sent this intelligence back to General Greene, but his work wasn't done. He had identified a target for attack. You see, the main British army was encamped in and around Gloucester town, preparing for the river crossing. To protect their camp from surprise attack, they'd established a number of outposts. One outpost was stationed about 2.5 miles to the south. This picket, consisting of 350 to 400 Hessian Jaegers, was strategically positioned to guard a bridge on the King's Highway where it crossed a branch of the Newton Creek. As the afternoon light began to fade, Lafayette gathered his small force and moved to the attack. He sent a small scout party forward to make contact. They quickly located the Hessian post. With the enemy fixed, Lafayette brought up the main body of his troops and launched a sudden, ferocious assault. The Hessians, who had not expected an attack, were caught completely unprepared. The crack of American rifles shattered the quiet of the late afternoon, and the Jaegers were thrown into instant chaos. What followed was not a static firefight, but a running battle. Lafayette leading the charge on horseback. The Americans drove the vaunted Jaegers from their position. The Hessians began a disorganized retreat back toward the main British camp, with the Americans in hot pursuit. The fight swept across the fields and woods for over half a mile. The sound of sustained rifle fire alerted the main British camp. Cornwallis, realizing his picket was under serious attack, dispatched a detachment of grenadiers to advance and provide covering fire for the retreating Hessians. According to Lafayette's report, the Hessians were reinforced twice, but the aggressive American attack continued to push them back. With more and more British grenadiers entering the fight and darkness following, Lafayette made the prudent decision to break off the engagement. He had achieved a stunning success, blooding the nose of an elite enemy unit, gathering valuable intelligence, and testing the mettle of his men. To press the attack further against a much larger, now alerted force would have just been reckless. He skillfully disengaged his troops under the cover of growing darkness and led them back to General Greene's camp in Haddonfield. In this brief encounter, Lafayette had demonstrated all the qualities that would define his military career. His personal bravery during the reconnaissance inspired his men. His aggressive tactics seized the initiative and overwhelmed a superior foe. His glowing praise for his soldiers after the battle would build fierce loyalty. And his prudent withdrawal showed a tactical maturity that belied his age. The skirmish at Gloucester was the first small-scale demonstration of complete leadership, proving he was far more than a political figurehead. Lafayette's attack was a resounding success, especially when you look at the casualties. His bold strike hit the Hessian picket hard, while his own forces barely suffered. The Americans lost only 1 man killed, 5 wounded. But for the Hessians, they lost about 60 men, roughly 20 killed, 20 wounded, another 20 taken prisoner. Following the skirmish, Cornwallis's operation proceeded without further interruption. His troops continued to ferry their collected livestock and supplies across the river, completing their mission by the 27th of November. The real and lasting impact of the Battle of Gloucester was not felt in New Jersey, but in the headquarters of the Continental Army. Lafayette's reconnaissance was an undeniable success. On November 26th, Lafayette penned an enthusiastic letter to George Washington giving a detailed account of the little success and lavishing praise on the, quote, spirited behavior of the militia and rifle corps. And this letter arrived at just the perfect moment for Washington. Major General Adam Stephen had recently been dismissed from the army for drunkenness and bad behavior during the Battle of Germantown. This left a divisional command open. Washington, who cared for Lafayette like a son, saw a perfect opportunity. He used Lafayette's brilliant work at Gloucester as a public reason to promote the young Frenchman. The victory, though small, proved Lafayette's courage, his ability to take charge, and his skill at leading American troops. And it was news of this operation that was key to Congress's decision to give Lafayette a command of his own division, which in turn was a brilliant political move. It fulfilled Lafayette's great ambition, it solidified his position as a leader in the Continental Army, but it also sent a strong message to the French court, showing that their countryman, a notable nobleman, was given real military power. This, in turn, helped strengthen the growing alliance between France and America at a critical point in the war. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Skirmish of Gloucester. If you have any thoughts about it, please let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video interesting or learned something new, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more History Distilled episodes. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day if you want to.